Football fans, picture this. You bet on your favorite player to score the first touchdown, and he throws an awesome block so his teammate can score instead. If this happens, BetMGM wants to give you another chance at the end zone. With BetMGM's second chance promotion, you'll get your stake back if your first touchdown scorer scores second instead. That's right, bet on any pro football player to score the first touchdown of the game. If you're right, you win. If your player scores second, you get your stake back in cash. Everyone knows the most exciting part of football is the score. With BetMGM's second chance promotion, you have a chance to keep the fun going after the first player crosses the goal line. Place a first touchdown score wager today. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only. Existing customer offer. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards vary. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Most deals are barely worth mentioning. But then there's AT&T's best deal on the new Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 6. You can get it on them when you trade in your eligible smartphone, any year, any condition. It's a deal so good, you'll be
shouting from the rooftops.
So grab a ladder and learn how to get that new phone on AT&T. AT&T. Connecting changes everything. Requires trade-in of Galaxy S, Note, or Z Series smartphone. Limited time offer. 256 gigabytes for $0. Additional fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See att.com/Samsung or visit an AT&T store for details.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of this very podcast in which we bring on people who are involved in independent music, or are still involved, like were in past tense. But these are people who have, participated in the beautiful independent music scene we all love and care about, whether it's indie rock, punk, emo, hardcore, metalcore, whatever subgenre you want to throw on it, as long as it's been in small, sweaty rooms at some point, then I'm interested in bringing these people on just to, kind of recap the thesis statement of this show. Because sometimes, to be honest, we're like 600 some odd episodes deep. Sometimes even I forget why I do what I do. Just kind of like, it's on the rails now, where it's like, this isn't work for me. This is obviously fun. I make some money off of it, but anyways, I digress. Let's talk about the guest this week. His name is Mike Mallamo. He is the vocalist for a band called Inside, and he also sang in a band called Dearly Departed, and he currently sings in a band called Star Harbor, or as the Bostonians like to call it, Star Harbor, even though Mike is not from Boston or anything like that. I just like to say harbor like that. It's funny. Anyways, Mike is, he's an incredibly interesting dude because, comes from the Long Island hardcore scene. Inside was a band that I know people here in Southern California, and, they were active, but, not incredibly active where they were, a household name, so to speak. They definitely are a band that I would call a, sort of best kept secret. Where it's like, if you hear them and you were of a certain age, you were like, my God, this band is incredible. But then, through all of the issues that happen in regards to, bands breaking up, but then also bands' music being widely available on streaming platforms and just, the word of mouth. Inside has not got a TikTok song. And so they haven't had a, resurgence like American football, like did on Tumblr or whatever. Anyways, I digress. But Inside just recently played 2 reunion shows in Long Island. And I was really disappointed that I couldn't make it out to it. But I was able to see them when they were originally around. And this is why Mike came on the show, not to promote the shows, but basically because we spoke right before, probably about a week or two before they played these shows. And so that's why you'll hear us speak about it in the future tense. But Inside was an important band. And I think anybody that has paid attention to the Long Island scene and has contributed to it in some way will point to Inside being a very, very influential band. And they're doing some work with State of Mind Recordings in regards to re-releasing some stuff on tape. And the original label that put out the Inside stuff, Redwood Records, we speak about that a few times in the interview, but they have all of Inside stuff up on the streaming platforms. And so I encourage you to listen to not only this interview, but the band, because I really do. I feel strongly about this band's legacy and how people should pay attention to it, especially the My Funeral record. That thing is beautiful, and I'll play a little bit of it as we head into the interview. But Mike was a great chat, a great hang, and I chased him down, contacted a few different people, and everyone was willing to connect me to him, but it wasn't until this re-release on State of Mind Recordings on cassette. He re-released My Funeral and the 7 Inches to Wall Drug, which was a collection of all the 7 inches that Inside put out as like a sort of pseudo full length. But anyway, it wasn't until that where we were able to make this happen. And Mike was very gracious with his time because we had a lot of recording issues. So I did my best to make sure that this interview was, concise and to the point. But there were times where I had to, edit around certain things. But regardless, great chat. If you want to say something to me, this show, give some ideas, you can always email us, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear feedback, love to hear guest ideas or just general what's ups, just being like, hey, I got a new band. I got a new piece of music I would like you to check out. And I do my best to respond to every single email that comes in. So I appreciate that. And if you would not be so kind as to do 2 things to support this particular show. 1, you can leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page, and you can leave a rating on Spotify if you're listening to it on your mobile device. All of those things help out tremendously. And then also the number 2, just share it on social media. If you like a particular episode, just say, boom, here we go. Everybody should listen to this, because that's really the best way for people to get podcasts recommended to them, especially if it's of something that they should be listening to. So 2 things, absolutely free, will cost you $0 and take up maybe a minute and a half worth of your time. And it'll mean the world to me because, that's just what people say. But genuinely, I do. I see all this stuff that goes out there, and I pay very close attention to how people are interacting with the show. So anyways, let's talk about weekly recommendations, because I have been doing this for the entirety of 2024, just talking about new music and focusing in on particular releases, whether they're new, old, anything in between. Something that I have been, spinning or listening to or whatever, spinning. I have records, but I know everybody doesn't have record players and collect records like the insane person like I am. But I have to give a shout out to the band State Faults. They just put out a new record called Children of the Moon on Death Wish. I have loved this band since the get-go. I actually was helpful in connecting the dots between some of their early releases on No Sleep Records, which is a label that doesn't exist anymore. But I met the guys, played shows with them, and I think the band is so special and so incredible. And they've been around now for 10 plus years. And this is, I want to say, their 4th full length. And for a band in this genre, which is, broadly attached to the screamo scene, as it were, I just think that this is their defining record. I think this is really, really good and important. And trust me in saying that if you like anything modern of that screamo variety, or if you like the classic stuff, whether it's Orchid, Reversal Man, all that sort of stuff, you will find value in this record. So again, the band's name is State Faults. The record is called Children of the Moon. It's out now on Death Wish. It's streaming everywhere. Check it out, because the band is really, really good. And then listen to their old stuff, because it's really exceptional as well. It's all in the same vein. They've just been able to hone it over time to get it to where they're at now. There we go. All right, let's talk to Mike from Inside and Dearly Departed in Star Harbor. And he's just a great chat. Let's go.
I first ran into you guys watching you with Elliot here at Coos Cafe in Santa Ana, California. And I was aware of you just because of your connection with Redwood Records. And, I'd heard the name and seen the 7 inches and what have you. But then after watching you guys, I was like, oh, I love what it is that you're doing. And, starting off with a real simple question is how was that show with Elliot, or how did you guys hook up with them to begin with?
The most active we were, we were active from 95 to 99, and, there was such a full existing scene on Long Island by the time we got started. I mean, we really were able to just hit the ground running. We played a couple of backyard shows, and then our first real show was, the last show for a band called Mind Over Matter, was huge on Long Island. Definitely a band that deserved a lot more attention overall than they got. So our first real show was in front of like 1,500 people, I would say. So we really did hit the ground running. And, shortly after that, some guy was like, "Hey, saw you at that show. Want to put out a CD for you?" His name was Kyle Anderson. That was Sunny Side Up Records. So before we even kind of realized that, hey, we got something cool here, like we were making CDs, and we were scheduling a tour for the following summer. So I would say, even though we were only around from 95 to 99, there were very few, if any, moments of prolonged downtime.
Right. And that's what I appreciate you laying out that, because I know, especially me being from Southern California and randomly, you guys only made it out to the West Coast once, right? Or did you make it out twice?
We did make it out twice. Chris Smith from Redwood Records got us out there the first time, and we had to kind of book our way out there. Our guitar player Vinny, the internet was in its infancy at that point, and I'm still not a techie guy now, and I didn't give a crap about it back then. I didn't know what it was. It was new to me, and I was whatever it was, 21, 22 years old, and I was already like, nah, not interested.
Yep.
So Vinny went on Book Your Own Fucking Life, which is a website at the time, and he kind of put all the puzzle pieces in place between New York and California. So, the first tour out west really was predicated upon the whole Chris Smith Redwood Records thing. And he did a pretty good job of promoting himself, his label, and his bands, because by the time we got out there the first time and played Coos, a bunch of those people already were way familiar with the 7-inch, and we were like, this is amazing. So we love that place, man. We love playing there. We love playing for those people. We love that we had kind of a, almost like a weird kinship with everything and everyone out there. And like I said, the door was like open when we got there the first time. So it was like, again, we stepped in the proverbial shit.
Right. Well, and I think that's what was so, because when I saw you guys at Coos, and then did you play both times at Coos? Because I seem to remember watching you guys more than once there.
We did play at Coos twice.
Okay.
And we played with a bunch of really awesome local bands like Sometimes Promise and Stratego and 100 Words for Snow.
Yes, that's right.
18 Visions. We met such cool people and played such cool shows out there. Like, we looked forward to Coos, and we talked about Coos like it was this, so I think when we got back to Long Island, started telling everyone about Coos Cafe, and then they saw the pictures, they were like, "Oh, we thought you guys played this huge." Like, no, it's like a little coffee shop, dude. But it was awesome. It was awesome. Jimmy World recorded a video in there, blah blah blah. So it was it was a fun time. We played the Pickle Patch, which was some dude's, this kid Mike, it was his living room in Goleta. Goleta, Santa Barbara, man. Like, it was, again, like, it was a living room, but like, we looked forward to those shows so much, when they come up to us, like, "Oh, it's not going to be like the biggest show." We're like, we don't care. Just get everybody in there, as many as can fit, and let's do what we do, man. Let's have a blast.
Right. Well, fun fact about the Pickle Patch: Steve Aoki, a world famous DJ, that was his apartment as well.
Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you. Mike Fight and Steve Aoki, and then I know, it's really funny because Steve was a pivotal part of that whole Santa Barbara area, just like Mike was as well. And so, absolutely. Like, if you, you obviously don't like the internet, like you said, but if you did some light Googling of Steve Aoki, Pickle Patch, and hardcore punk, like, you're going to get some fun results on the internet.
Ah, man. I wonder if I ever met him.
Honestly, if he was not on tour, you absolutely did. Cause
That's crazy.
I know it's really, really funny. But going back to like the Coos aspect of it, like when I saw you guys the first time, I definitely, like I said previously, like was aware of you, but I hadn't bought the 7-inch or anything like that. And then went to see Elliot and then was blown away by you guys because I was like, this is everything that I love about, this style of, hardcore adjacent, but clearly, whatever capital E emo. And then from that point, I was like, oh, cool. There's an affiliation with Redwood Records, like, which is a label that, frankly, no one talks about anymore, but like had a pretty interesting impact for those, couple of years they were really active.
There's some great bands on that label.
Absolutely. But I think what took me about you guys was the fact that could tell you were from Long Island, like you wore that in your sleeve, but it was like you didn't necessarily like, I guess, typifying you, like you didn't look like hardcore kids, it was just one of those things, like even though you most likely were, it was like, you're like, oh, these like look like, average people, which is not a bad thing. But, I realize there's no like question in this. This is me just like spouting off observations at you, but, was it one of those things that like people were kind of surprised when you guys get up there and started to play, where it's just like, oh, I didn't expect much from this random band called Inside. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, you're not wrong, and at times it was a blessing, at times it was a curse. I really had only started listening to hardcore when I turned like 17 or 18. In the 80s and into the early 90s, I was straight, rap music, and New York, Long Island at that time was the place for rap music. So I got swept up in it. And it was, the natural progression after that, because, it had started to change and I was looking for something else. So I started getting into the Smiths and a lot of the, Brit rock stuff. And I was like, I want to try something a little edgier now. And all of a sudden I just went on this, musical journey, which was amazing. And it, kind of pushed me through to like bands like Minor Threat and, but I was a jock, like I played sports and I just happened to love music. So I wasn't really overly paying attention to any kind of fashion. And my drummer was from the same town as me. He could probably tell you the exact same story that I just did, minus the rap music. But I don't think that really came into play much for us. John and Vinny were probably the two most stylish looking ones in the band. The rest of us were just like, whatever, let's get up on stage. Let's do what we do, no pretenses. But, at the same, in the same breath, I think the fact that we didn't have a look, may have hurt us in terms of trying to get a little farther, but we didn't realize that at the time. We weren't really interested in quote unquote playing ball. We just wanted to play music and have fun. And when we started seeing all the other bands that we would consider to be contemporaries around us, like getting more recognition, we were like, oh yeah, those guys have much cooler clothes and haircuts and
Right. And I don't mean to like, put you in a corner or typify it, but it's just there is something that is interesting where I love your description of like, I love music and that was what drew me in, as opposed to, the quote unquote scene where it's like, yes, people get drawn into this subculture for a lot of different reasons, but when you get drawn in and then immediately adopt the, I got to wear Jinkos or I got to wear, basketball jerseys and like all the things that people do. And I'm not saying that you guys would, show up looking like 25 to life or something like that, but just that idea of like, oh, here are, normal looking people playing, slightly aggressive music with heart on the sleeve lyrics. Like, here you go. Like, take it for what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that was our hope, is that it would just be taken for what it was. I mean, the influences at the time were obvious. It was Sunny Day Real Estate. It was Elliott. It was Far. It was Texas Is the Reason. It was The Promise Ring and Braid and Castor and, all the bands that you would assume we listened to, but then we also loved stuff outside of that. Tom has always been big into reggae. I was into hip hop, and I really liked like aggressive screamo-y, type stuff like, Angel Hair and Heroin and, Dive and, all these like super aggressive bands. So I really think we just kind of went into the kitchen like a bunch of amateur chefs and pulled everything out of the cabinets and threw it in a pot, and we just kept adding things until it tasted good, because I think our sound, evolved quite a bit over the 3 releases. And I think we were always kind of looking for the next way to mature or evolve. And unfortunately 5 years, in my opinion, wasn't enough time to get where we wanted to get. But I think we're all super proud of what we did in the time we had.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And like that's to your point of just the evolution. Like it's exciting to watch bands, grow up in front of you. Even in retrospect, as a 43-year-old grown ass adult, like listening to my funeral now and being like, this not only holds up, but like you could play it for a person who is 18 years old and likes all that stuff that you're talking about, through the sort of nostalgia lens and be like, oh yeah, this was released like last week, right? It's like, no, this came out, 99. Like, and it's like, what, really?
I hate to play like, or even sound like the gatekeeper, but when I listen to what kids are listening now and calling emo or indie or whatever, like, not only do I want to play them the music that we were listening to back then, I want to like take them back there. I want to throw them in the DeLorean. I want to hit 88 miles an hour, and I want to get them back to like 95, 96, 97 and be like, yo, this is what it was like to see Jimmy Eat World in a small club, or Texas Is the Reason in a small club, at a time where this music was kind of just becoming a thing, but at the same time, it was being perfected. And I was talking about this the other day. In my mind, it was being perfected. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, yeah, Jimmy Eat World went on to make some unbelievable music. I love them to this day. I listen to all their stuff. I love it. They never let me down. But it will never get better than Clarity. I think the whole genre will never get better than Clarity. And that's nobody's fault. That's not their fault. They just happen to like do the thing. So like I've tried a couple times to play Clarity for, the younger generation. And, some I get the pleasure of watching it hit them the way it hit me. And others, I can see the look on their face that they're just like, I don't know, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, shit. Like, really? You're not feeling that?
I understand the gatekeepiness of it, but I do think it's one of those things where I like to look at it or frame it as the idea of like the turning of a page, where it's like, okay, that was not even the end of an era, because clearly, to your point, like this, all it does is continue on in different iterations, and it could be special in different ways. But it's like, okay, well, that's the year mark of that era, because that record, like you said, is a perfect summation of what bands were trying to sound like in 1989, like in this genre.
And we didn't even know. We didn't know we were trying to sound like that.
Right.
And I think we all kind of felt like the Beach Boys when Sgt. Pepper's came out, and it was like, ah, shit. Like,
oh, they did that.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Like,
Yeah, totally.
But but I was watching a documentary recently on, New York hardcore. I think it was called The Godfathers of Hardcore. And it was, Agnostic Front and, up to Sick of It All and Biohazard. And it encompassed, all those bands. And, I do remember, it may have been Vinny Stigma, but I don't want to misquote anybody, where they were like, then all of a sudden it was like, the end of an era. And for me, it was all the same era, because I came in on the coattails of bands like Biohazard and Sick of It All. And then my musical taste simply graduated or gravitated towards indie emo, like this, kind of Midwestern thing that was happening and Southern thing that was happening. And it never died for me, but for those guys, it died. For me, it died in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I'm sure that there are kids that started listening to this music in 98, 99, 2000. They were like, no way, man. There were so many good bands after that. And I'm like, that's the way I felt.
Yeah, no, that's
in the generation before.
Yep, no, that's the way you personally, the tastes are subjective, and that's, where your taste lands.
Let's talk about our friends at Rockabilly.com. Not only are they my friends because they've been supporting the show for many, many years, but this is a company I wholeheartedly stand by because they have amazing, officially licensed and exclusive merch to what it is that they do. So you can shop for anything, whether it's like Rob Zombie merch, whether it's Green Day, whether it's, Alice in Chains, Slipknot, Eminem, Nirvana, the list goes on and on. But you get the direction I'm heading, where you can buy stuff for your friends, your family, and you will be able to do that with this promo code. Please, this promo code is very important. 100 words or less, that's the number 100. It gets you 10% off of your entire order. And that's great, because basically that's like me putting money in your pocket and you get cool band merch. Like, there's literally not a bad thing in this whole business transaction. Okay. Besides the fact that you're spending money, but like, let's be honest, what else are you going to use your money for? Like food? No, band merch is way more important. But rockabilia.com is the place where you need to point your web browser. The promo code is 100 words or less. They ship it from the Midwest here in the United States of America. It gets to you all over the place very quickly. And I love what this company does. So full stop, rockabilia.com. 100 words or less, 10% off your entire order. Let's go. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know what it's like. When you're a kid, all of a sudden, stuff's getting shoved in your brain, whether it's like school, I got to learn how to tie my shoes, or learning a language, or all of these things that we do. And then, the Peter Pan quote always comes in my mind when they're talking about growing up, like, don't grow up, it's a trap. And granted, there's, traps that exist, whether it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm too busy, I can't do anything. And oh my gosh, like I really only think about, work or whatever. Stop. Just take a moment for yourself and explore that curiosity. Explore that with a third party. And that is why BetterHelp, I just love therapy personally. And I think BetterHelp is such an incredible option for people to dip into that is all online. It's incredibly easy to access for people. And on top of that, if you are curious about therapy, there is no better way than to sign up using my promo code, of course. So go to betterhelp.com/Ray and you will get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Ray. I wholeheartedly advocate for therapy and ignite that curiosity with someone else being like, hey, how do I carve time? How do I strategize? And then boom, your therapist is like, how about you do these things? And it's like, oh my gosh, you've just unlocked all this stuff in my brain. Now I'm going to put it in action. So go to betterhelp.com/Ray and get 10% off your first month now.
I'm going to guess like the, affinity for those bands that you were mentioning, and then like getting out to Southern California, being able to play with Elliot and, seeing these areas that you had only, listened to music from. What was that experience when you guys started to, tour and get outside of your area and see these things that were probably felt pretty distant from where you were? Was it just all a crazy adventure that you were like, I can't believe we're here and we're doing this?
Yes, you become that, and that's very well said, and that's a great question, because you become a musical expeditionary like that. Yes, we were out there to tour, but this was, kind of pre-internet, or at least the infancy of it. It was pre-cell phone, so we were just 5 20-year-old dudes who jumped in a school bus, or 7, I should say. We had 2 roadies. We jumped in a school bus with directions on a piece of paper, and we just went. And you hope for the best, and it's exciting, and it's scary, and it's crazy. But it's funny you say that, because I made a point of saying on the microphone every single night, and my we all felt this way. I just happened to be the one with the microphone. But every night I was like, oh, by the way, this is officially the farthest west any of us have ever been. And we kept saying that at every single show because we were acutely aware of it. I mean, not only was it obvious we were doing what we were doing, yeah, but like the landscapes changed. You know what I'm saying? Like you start getting farther west and things start looking very different. A lot more wide open land. Now all of a sudden there's lush mountains. Now all of a sudden there's rock and clay mountains. Like now all of a sudden we're in California and the beach looks completely different than it does on Long Island, and the city is this, and like it's it's kind of like seeing Neverland live, like it only existed on TV and movies for 20 years and all of a sudden I'm here.
Right.
And
then you get to play a show with some of your favorite bands where you're like, why do we get to do this? We're allowed to meet these guys? Like, this is crazy.
And that's one of the funnier stories is the first tour we ever went on was with this band called Irony of Lightfoot. They were also from Long Island. The singer Neil, who's now a stand-up comedian, Neil Rubenstein. Yes, everyone, if you're out there, you got to check out Neil, dude. And he sang for Sons of Abraham for a bit as well. He was the singer of Irony of Lightfoot, and he went ahead and booked this tour and asked us to come with him. And we were two very different bands. They were like screamy hardcore. We were what we were. And we just jumped into a couple of cars and rented van and drove around. We did like 6 or 7 shows in Pennsylvania and then 6 or 7 shows in Canada. And all of a sudden, like the last show in Canada, we get to the town we're playing. It was actually called Oakdale, which is funny because it's a town right here on Long Island called Oakdale. So we were, had our fun with that as well. But we get there and we see the flyer and Promise Ring was playing. And we were like, what? This is tonight? And they were like, yeah. And we're like, Promise Ring's playing? And they're like, yeah. And we're like, nobody told us this? Like, we had no idea. And it was the day that Promise Ring's first, full length, 30 Degrees Everywhere. It came out that day. So like, I was like the first person I know to own it, like there's like some super cool shit. And also we were supposed to do a couple of reunion shows, like 3 or 4 of them out in Orange County. And something went wrong. Last minute we had to cancel. But me, Tom, and Craig still went out there to hang out with Chris Smith. And at the time, Chris Smith was living with Popeye from Farside, who's another one of my favorite bands. He didn't tell us he was living with him. And I walked in and Chris is like, oh, by the way, this is Popeye from Farside. Mike sings for Inside. He's a huge fan, blah, blah, blah. And Popeye was like, oh, cool. Oh, wait, hold on. And he went in his bedroom and he came out and he gave me a test pressing of what was the second Farside record? The full length, the guy with the briefcase, not Manifest Destiny. The Monroe Doctrine. He gave me like a test press CD. I still have that shit. I sold all my CDs a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm not selling this. I got Popeye handed it to me, dude.
That's incredible. There is something that is so inherently special about this music scene, and I know we're obviously viewing it through rose-colored glasses, but the moment where you are able to share the stage with the band, meet a person whose art you admire, and then all of a sudden the world just seems so much smaller where you're like, wait a minute, like I saw this person play in front of me, but then I went into a Trader Joe's and they're working there. Like what in God's name is this? But yeah, everybody's the same when you boil it down.
Yep. I mean, except for, the bands that kind of started on the heels of the era that we were in. I mean, very few bands from our era ever tasted like major success. So it's really cool to see bands like Braid and Sunny Day Real Estate like going back out and like getting the second chance and getting their proper due, like they're playing these huge clubs now with way more people and way more press, and like they deserved all this back then, but I think we were all just kind of ahead of the curve. But I think the cream always rises to the top. And when it had its second breath, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, I think there were a lot of people that were still like, yo, like these bands were right there and they got left at the altar. Like, you need to let them in. You got to let them in. So like to go see Braid or Sunny Day or any of these bands on these reunion tours and these, larger clubs with these huge audiences, like with the amazing sound system, like, yeah, hell yeah. Instead of that crackling PA and the VFW hall and this guy's amp isn't working and we don't have mics for the drums and can you sit in front of the bass drum because it keeps moving? No. Now they're on these huge stages with these amazing sound systems. And then, it's like I've been waiting to hear this music sound like this my whole life.
Right. Yeah. You're like, this is how it was meant to be.
Correct.
The idea of getting connected with Redwood Records, like you said, you played your first show and then got connected with a person interested in putting out your records.
Yep.
How did you even get hooked up with Redwood? Because obviously, being from Orange County, like that was something that it was, especially to your point as well, the infancy of the internet. Like, yes, people were able to reach out to each other and hear music or whatever, but just the idea of a band not in the particular area of the record label signing a band was really weird. So how'd you even get hooked up with Redwood?
That would probably be a better question for Vinny. He kind of handled it at the time. We were dealing with a label on Long Island with a guy named Paul Dingle. The name of the record label was Motherbox. And in fact, Motherbox and Redwood co-released something for us. I believe it was the 2-song 7-inch, if I'm not mistaken. So Vinny and Paul kind of worked that, and I don't really remember the specifics involved, but to hear that there was a label in California that was interested in working with us, like the answer to your question is like, yeah, I was sitting here like, how the hell did they hear about us? Like, we haven't been out there. Like, we haven't, our 7-inch made it out there. Like, all right. So it was, it was definitely, one of those times where you start to think that like, hey man, maybe the word is spreading, like maybe we're accomplishing something here. As it turns out, it wasn't. We just happened to have it fall into the lap of a really cool dude in California who introduced us to, the scene out there, and we got to play some amazing. We got to play with Far out there. We got to play with Will Haven out there. 18 Visions, like I said, so bands that really went on to have successful careers, and it never would have happened if Chris didn't bring us out there. And again, like I said, he was the catalyst for our first national tour. So that was, that was definitely, kismet as far as we were concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. When did you first, start to sing? Because you do have a very unique voice like this. And I know, and I know that could like work in different ways for different people. Like, people I'm sure had an opinion, good or bad, being like, oh yeah, inside, like, dude, love his voice. And there's other people who are like, yo, that music's great, but that dude's awful. Like, I can't stand his vocals or whatever. So when did you first start to, experiment with singing? Was it, were you in choir? Like, what was the vibe?
It's a kind of a very funny story. It's one of those things that I kind of, I don't know. I just knew that I could do if I ever got the chance. And I think it's because I used to sing a lot in my room, in the shower, when I was alone. I grew up listening to a lot of singers. I grew up listening to, and I'm not kidding about this, like I grew up listening to like John Denver and Jim Croce and Simon and Garfunkel and all these really, soulful lyricists, singer-songwriters, also, a lot of like Al Green and Marvin Gaye, So I had these strong male, Sam Cooke especially, like I had all these strong male vocalists around me my whole life. And I used to sing along to it when I was listening to it. And I was like, I don't know, maybe it's my own ears in a moment of like, foolhardy appreciation of my own abilities. But like, I feel like this sounds okay. Like, I feel like maybe I could sing. And I was 18. I was at a graduation party from high school. My buddy had a party in his backyard. I had a couple friends who had this band. They played a bunch of cover songs. They played some of their own stuff. They took a break. The singer wandered off with some girl, and they were ready to start playing again, and he wasn't back, so they just started playing, instrumentally, and they started playing State of Love and Trust by Pearl Jam, and I had a couple of drinks in me, and, had some liquid confidence, as they say, and I literally just walked up and grabbed the mic and sang that song. And when it was over, like a bunch of people, I was like, oh, that was fun. And a bunch of people came up to me and they were like, yo, what the fuck was that? And I was like, that was fun. And then that singer went off to college, and the rest of them stayed behind, and they were like, you want to sing for our band? I was like, yeah, man, definitely. And that's literally how it started.
That's incredible that was like, it just in your brain, you were like, I know that I could do this. I just need to find my spot or my space. And then just being able to do that. Did you, I guess shortly after that, like, when did the idea of playing in a band occur to you? Was it like after you did that, were you bitten by it, or did you always want to do it?
From that point on, I should say, is when I started to think like, oh man, like I'd like to do this a little bit more often. So when they called me and they were like, listen, Matt's going away to college. Do you want to sing for our band? I was like, absolutely. We did our thing. It was 90s alternative-ish. But then when I kind of left that band, started another one, it was very old school New York hardcore. And it was a tough thing to keep together. Our guitar player was a bit younger than us. His parents didn't like him spending a whole boatload of time, kind of doing this. And all of a sudden, Eddie Reyes, who was in a band called Clockwise at the time, which was a huge band on Long Island, Eddie later went on to start The Movie Life, and then shortly after that, Taking Back Sunday. He came up to us and he was like, I'm looking to start a side project. You guys want to? And we were like, oh, okay, yeah. And Eddie was royalty on Long Island at the time. So, we were like, hell yeah, we want to do this. And that's what took our sound from old school hardcore to like more of a Long Island melodic hardcore punk. And that's when I got to kind of use my singing voice again, because all I was doing was screaming when I was in word of mouth. And this allowed me to start singing again. And I'll be honest with you, like I listened back to some of that, inside stuff, especially the older stuff. Like, again, like you could tell, like I grew up listening to John Denver and Simon and Garfunkel, and I was always drawn to this. And then the band's playing, this other type of music. So a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't know, like your voice doesn't always fit the music. I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get that now. I also don't think I was a great singer. I think I was a guy who had a good voice, but didn't understand the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys, the appropriate way to navigate a melody start to finish in a song. All I wanted to do was get to the loud parts and get to the screaming parts so I could really hit the high notes and scream, because the emotion was where I wanted to be. Everything beneath that, I didn't understand it. I hadn't explored it. I didn't know what it was. Right.
Yeah. You were just experimenting, but obviously experimenting in the context of a band to be able to.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really cool where you had enough. You probably combine it with like the youthful ignorance where you're just like, whatever, I'm going to try it. Who cares? Maybe at an older age, you would have been like, oh, I don't want to embarrass myself. And you're like, no, I'm fine.
And I think that was a big part of it. Was I kind of felt like, I don't know, like we're all a bunch of kids and we're just out here doing a thing. Like I don't think anybody expects me to be perfect, so I'm just gonna. But in my own head, that's what, like, I've always been kind of a perfectionist, I guess, when it comes to my voice, because I feel like that's probably what I do best. So, like you said, some people may disagree, and that's totally fine. But, now going back and listening to some of those old Inside recordings, I'm like, oh my God, how do people like this? Like my voice, like I missed that note. Oh my God. Like I want to go back and re-record some shit.
Yeah, no, everybody always looks back at, their recorded material and is like, wow, I can't even believe anybody liked this. And it's like, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah, man. And I think that's the one thing you need to do as an artist in any, classification, whether it be physical art, whether it be, acting, singing, whatever. You really do have to silence in your own brain the people who don't like it and focus on the people who do like it and play to them, because you're not going to please everyone all the time. That's one of the oldest sayings in the world, and it's true. So if somebody's telling you like, yeah, I don't know, you'd be like, all right, cool, man, it's not for you. Sorry, I'm going to go play for these people who really do seem to appreciate it. And, a couple months ago, my guitar player, Vinny, alerted us to the fact that there's a podcast called My Favorite 7-Inch. And they were reviewing the 2-song 7-inch we put out with Wait Until Tomorrow and Regarding Time Lost. And they listened to both songs and break them down. And the one guy brought it in and he was like, yep, this is, one of my favorite 7-inches. And the other guy had never heard it before. And the guy who had never heard it before was hating it. And he was like, yeah, the music's cool at some time, at some points. But like, this guy, I don't know if he has like perfect pitch or whatever, but like, even when he screams, he's on key. And he's like, that's not a good thing. He's like, I want to hear him mess up a little bit, and in my head, I'm like, dude, I just missed like 18 notes. Like, what are you talking about? But that's just me critiquing my own shit, and then the other guy was like, yeah, you read some of these lyrics and they read like some, brokenhearted, high school stuff. And I'm like, dude, I was 19. Like, that's exactly what it was. Like,
evilgreed.net is one of my favorite places to buy merch on the internet, full stop. I don't care whether you're buying CDs, vinyl, t-shirts, long sleeves, hoodies. Let me just give you a little sampling of some of the rad bands that they work with, whether it's Gridiron, Dying Wish, Cold Cave, Chat Pile, or whether it's record labels like Triple B, Flat Spot, Sargent House. The list goes on. But ultimately, the point of view they're trying to get across is cool, artistic, heavy stuff. That is what I like to describe them as, and they've accepted that label. But it ships from Berlin, Germany, which I know might sound intimidating to us here in the United States, but trust me, it is not, because the shipping rates are very advantageous for us here in America. So you can get really cool limited edition stuff shipped directly to your door from like, maybe it's one of those things where you're like, dude, that European tour looks so cool. It's not happening here in the United States. Guess what? You can probably find a piece of merch from that tour that you can commemorate and look cool that you went to that European tour. So anyway, they have so much cool stuff. Like I said, just go there. If you like the show, I can guarantee you will like 90% of the bands that are listed on there. And then you'll buy a bunch of stuff and you'll thank me later. So evilgreed.net, point your web browser there and enjoy shopping.
Football fans, picture this. You bet on your favorite player to score the first touchdown, and he throws an awesome block so his teammate can score instead. If this happens, BetMGM wants to give you another chance at the end zone. With BetMGM's second chance promotion, you'll get your stake back if your first touchdown scorer scores second instead. That's right, bet on any pro football player to score the first touchdown of the game. If you're right, you win. If your player scores second, you get your stake back in cash. Everyone knows the most exciting part of football is the score. With BetMGM's second chance promotion, you have a chance to keep the fun going after the first player crosses the goal line. Place a first touchdown scorer wager today. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only, DC only. Existing customer offer. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards vary. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
That actually dovetails perfectly with another question I was going to ask, where it seemed lyrically, what you were doing was very reflective of the moment of what you were going through and very heart in the sleeve. But the thing that I know that I appreciated, and still like I can look back and not be, like completely cringeworthy, of just like the music is dramatic. So why would the lyrics not be overwrought and dramatic? So it's like I felt like it matched it. And as you were, exploring writing lyrics and stuff like that, did you feel drawn to, be that heart in your sleeve person, or was that something you had to like access a different part of your brain for?
It was all I knew, and I don't mean to keep going back to this, but again, I grew up listening to John Denver, Paul Simon, all these, singer songwriters, and even the soul, singers. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if there's anything better than a man baring his soul and crooning, whether it be about loss or about a woman or, like whatever, and I say a male because that's the only perspective I can speak from. So that's, I think, more what I draw from. It's difficult to, kind of fall in line and understand somebody else's pain if you haven't at least had the opportunity to walk in their shoes. So when I heard these grown men singing about these things, I was just kind of drawn to it. And like you said, the music is incredibly melodic and beautiful. And, I felt like it called for it, and the couple of songs we have that got a little louder and more aggressive start to finish, they were about other things, so it's not like I was singing about love and heartache over songs like Ray Brower and Broken Promise. I did it when I felt it was appropriate. And people on Long Island definitely had and still do have a lot of fun with that. I get some jabs about my lyrics and always have since the day we started doing it. But that's fine, man. Like it's cool. It's all good natured, and I'm not embarrassed about what I did. I sang about what the music made me feel, and I sang about the things that were easiest to express at that time, and otherwise it'll take you 6 months to write lyrics.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, it definitely, no matter what, when you reflect on your previous stuff, you're always going to be embarrassed by most of it because you're just like, oh geez. But to your point, like, you playing that music, you singing those lyrics were very reflective over who you were, and it drew people in, and there's a reason that resonated with people.
I can only hope so, and it definitely seems to have, even to this day. And, I'm incredibly appreciative that people cared then and still care now. When you start a band, the only thing you can really hope for is that somebody cares enough so that you can kind of keep playing shows for a while and maybe record and release some stuff and, whatever, and sort of have it be 25 years later and people still care. That's incredibly special. And that's, even on a small scale. I mean, listen, we're only going to be playing in front of 300 or 400 kids. We're not going to, be, playing in any of these huge venues like Sunny Day. We can have 400 people in a room 30 years later who still give a crap about what we did 30 years ago. Is not many people get that, not many people get that opportunity.
Absolutely. And so with Inside coming to an end, I presume that you guys, basically broke up because of normal life circumstances. Like, there was no hopes and dreams of becoming a proverbial rock star or anything like that. So what drew the band to an end?
There was a moment in time where we thought we had a shot. We were hearing things, people were coming back to us and telling us, this and that. I had a cup of coffee with a guy from Atlantic and a girl from Polygram, and, their answers, we're always kind of like, all right, yeah, just, whenever you have some new songs, like, let us know. And, oh yeah, whenever you're going to, if you're going to play in the city, let us know. And it was like, all right, well, is that it? You guys just kind of leave us out in the middle of a pool with no life raft. And, at some point we have to do something to get your attention or we're going to drown, like that's the way it really felt. So even though we felt like we were getting closer, at the same time, it was obvious that we've been doing this for 5 years. We're in our mid-20s. We have girlfriends. We have families who are like, what are we doing here? Are you guys just going to do this forever? Or, you guys are 25 years old now. Like, are we going to make some life decisions, or are you just going to drive around the country a couple times a year in a van playing in front of the same, 200 or 300 people? And, we went on a tour to Italy, which did not really go all that well. There was a lot of political unrest there at the time, so a bunch of shows got canceled. And, when we got back, I think there was just kind of this undeniable, haze of uncertainty that was hanging over the band. And I think people needed to make some life decisions. That being said, I was probably the most distressed about that because the girl I was dating at the time, we had broken up. I was, being super emo about that. And now, like, I just felt like, the band was so I just kind of went dark for, a couple weeks. We didn't rehearse. I didn't really contact anyone. And all of a sudden one day I got a message from, guitar player John, and he was like, Mike, it's obvious that, like, you're not into this anymore, and the rest of us have decisions to make. So, we got together without you, and we talked about it, and we think, that's pretty much it. And as sad as I was about it, like, he wasn't wrong. So that was kind of the way it happened. And we knew that my funeral was on its way, to be released. And so when we called Chris and told him, he was super bummed about it, but it was what it was. We had an amazing last show. Our last show was our record release show, which was super cool. So, as far as endings go, I think we had the proper send off, but at the same time, like 2 weeks after it was over, I kind of sat there and I was like, did we do the right thing? Like, was it the right time? Should I have tried harder? That kind of sat with me for a while. Again, no regrets, but at the same time, hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah, of course. Well, and then I think it was exciting, a couple years later when I remember it was like, oh, dude, the new Inside band, Dearly Departed. And it was like, oh, cool. Like, this is, a continuation of what was happening with Inside, but, just a little more focus, a little, age, wisdom, whatever you want to call it. So did you, like, as you were getting farther away from Inside, was the idea in your brain that you always wanted to continue to make music regardless of whatever else was happening in your life?
After Inside broke up, I stepped away from the scene intentionally for quite some time. And then I was brought back in by a random phone call from this dude, Joe Rubino, who played bass in this band Tension on Long Island. And Tension was, definitely old school, kind of beat down hardcore. But Joe's an incredible bass player, just like uber talented musician. And he wanted to try something different. So he called me in. And the other guys from Inside had started this band called Blood Red, and I was really the only one who wasn't doing anything. So I was like, yeah, I'd like to be in a band again. And, obviously Dearly Departed was a lot darker than Inside, maybe a little bit more ethereal, but I enjoyed being in that band as well. I thought we recorded some really, really good stuff. And then I went away again for a while, and then Tom from Inside, called me, and he was like, listen, Craig and I are trying to start a band, like a 90s alternative sounding band. Do you want to be the singer? And I was like, sure. And that went through a couple of evolutions. Craig didn't really have the time for it anymore, so we had to replace him. We had to replace our bass player. And, lo and behold, Star Harbor came around, which is the band I'm in now. And I think all three bands have a vastly different sound. You had like the indie emo with Inside. You had kind of a dark, brooding, I don't even know what you'd refer to Dearly Departed as. I just knew it was kind of dark. It was almost sounded like what Joy Division would have sounded like if they decided to be heavy, and then Star Harbor is almost like 90s alternative mashed together with some form of like, Americana country. So, singing for those three bands was fun because they were all different. They required different kinds of singing. They required different kinds of lyrics. And, it's been fun to do all three.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, the idea that it's like that, quote, I think it was from The Godfather, where it's like, I try to get out and they pull me back in, where it's like, even though you may feel, disconnected from, use the air quotes here, like the scene, if you're like, hey, if a good friend reaches out and it's like, has this interesting thing that they want to do, music I still care about, and I will absolutely explore that, which it sounds like that was the case for, Dearly Departed and Star Harbor.
After Inside, I kind of figured I'd eventually start doing something again, but, Star Harbor kind of came out of nowhere. Like we had just kind of had, the last Inside reunion, like, 2 or 3 years before that. So I was kind of resigned to the fact that, like, man, maybe I should start learning to play the acoustic guitar and writing my own songs and just playing acoustic in bars to anyone who gives a crap about it, and just have fun doing it. That's probably going to be the only way I'm going to be able to sing it, anymore. So I literally had started taking guitar lessons when I got the call from Tom. And, Star Harbor was originally called Dead of Winter. Then we changed our name after Craig and Anthony left over to Star Harbor. And that kind of came out of nowhere. As I said, I literally started taking guitar lessons because I had resigned myself to the fact that that was going to be the only way that I could, kind of continue singing, because I thought the band thing was, dead and gone. But, it popped its head up again, and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Did you, in these different, bands and all of the different experiences that you had with each of them, I know this is putting you on the spot, but do you like, the live performance? Do you like touring? Like, what's your, I guess, favorite aspect about, playing in a band?
I would have to say recording. I love playing live. I miss touring. Touring was incredible. But I really do love recording. I love being able to get into a studio and not only utilize, but also hear the nuances of the music and my voice. And, you really get to, because you're able to hear every little thing about the music and your voice, and, you can shape things in an intricate way that you're not able to do when you're playing them live for the first time. If you've never heard the song recorded, you don't really know the dynamics of what it can be. But once you get in a studio, then you can really start, peeking into some dark corners that you're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know he was doing that. Jay, you're playing that, like, oh, that's the beat here. Like, you start hearing all these different things, and that's when the song really takes shape. And I think because I've been such a fan of music and listening to music my whole life, being able to really craft the song to its finished state and then be able to listen to it leisurely, that was always the most enjoyable for me. But I love playing live, and I love touring. I wish we could tour again, but that's not going to happen. We all have wives and kids and houses and careers, and touring is unfortunately most likely off the table. I mean, listen, if somebody wants to have us open for Wilco or a band like that in Connecticut and Massachusetts, we can take a weekend. But getting in a van and driving for 6 weeks, unfortunately, those days are gone. So that's probably the most nostalgic part of Inside for me, was the tours, the stories, the memories, the fact that we did it at all, doing something that very few people ever got to do. Like, I can say I've been to every state in this country, the continental US, because of those tours. And that's not something everybody gets to say.
Absolutely. And I think that's what, it makes this subculture so special, because even though, you're playing in front of 10 to 20 people, whatever, 2 weeks in a row, then you play like one good show, and it's just like, even that experience in and of itself is so rare. And when you're talking about the whole spectrum of human existence, so it's like, most people view tour as just like, oh, you get in a bus and you do, it's like, no, this is a whole different thing. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, trying to it would be like bringing somebody here from 1950 and trying to explain to them about the internet. Like, if you didn't do it, like, yes, we got in a dank, smelly van and we drove for weeks on end. Yes, all the terrible things you're thinking about is what happened. But then there's the energy on stage. There's the energy coming from a crowd who may never have heard you before. There's seeing things and being in places you've never seen or been to before. There's, just all these things, man, that and some of my favorite stories are the worst stories, the worst experiences, like showing up in Missoula, Montana and playing a bar where the owner went away and didn't even tell the bartender or the staff that there was a show there that night. There was no other band playing. Missoula is a college town. It was the middle of the summer. There was nobody there. And the bartender was like, I don't know, like, you're welcome to come upstairs and, set up your instruments if you want. But we didn't know there was a show. We didn't advertise for it. And he's like, it's summertime. This is a college town. So he's like, I think we've had 10 people in here all week.
Right. You're like, I guess we're going to practice tonight.
That's it. We put our stuff up there and he's like, I can't pay you. He's like, but, he's like, if you want, you guys can drink for free. And we were like, oh, we don't really drink all that much. And we drank this local brew called Moose Drool. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3, we didn't know about IPAs and microbrews and, percentage of alcohol. We didn't understand all this. So we had a couple of these beers and we're like kind of wasted. And all of a sudden, these 3 girls show up out of nowhere and they see the instruments on stage and they're like, oh, is a band playing tonight? And he's like, yeah, these guys are from New York. And we're like, no. And they were like, oh, yeah, we want to hear the band from New York. Well, they probably were hoping we were going to sound like Better Than Ezra or, the Gin Blossoms. And we get up there and I'm screaming in their face and, we're messing songs up because we had too much to drink. And I mean, looking back, that is a terrible night in the life of a musician. But, 25 years later, it was a pretty awesome night.
Yeah, you remembered it. It sticks out.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and I love those where it's like it's the experiences that you have on both polar opposite sides that really stick out. It's like, yes, you can, remember the shows where it's like, oh yeah, I remember a good show here, a good show there, but it's like, oh man, remember when we played in front of -4 people in Missoula, Montana, or remember when we played our first show in front of 1,500 people? It's like, those are the ones that really stick out.
100%. And, and everything in between, and then there's the nights where you show up and you're not feeling great. Maybe you just played 12 shows in 12 days and, you needed a day off. You're on tour. This is not Motley Crue level tour life. This is 5 dudes who aren't showering as often as they should be, aren't eating as much as they need to be. Maybe you're not feeling great. You're not hygienic, all these things. And then you get up there and end up having this incredible show. And then you start to feel invincible and you start to feel like we can do this every night under any circumstances. And it's going to be amazing. And then you get to a show and, something kind of knocks you back to reality. And you're like, all right, maybe not every night, but most nights I think we can pull so it's a lot of highs and lows. And I think that the emotions of that are something that only a musician maybe can really understand, maybe an actor as well, where you have those performances that just keep you coming back, even though you've had the performances that make you want to just bury your head and forget that you do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last thing I wanted to hit on was the, because inside you're putting out music on different formats and, there's always been this kind of like percolation of inside, like you mentioned, doing multiple reunion shows and stuff like that. For you being able to, play these songs that are 20, 25 years old and still have a resonance to them and in importance to you, what keeps you connected to that? Like, because clearly you don't need to do this at this point anymore, but there's a specialness to it that obviously brings you back. What keeps you motivated from that side of things?
I think you probably look at it as, like what keeps you thinking about your high school sweetheart for the rest of your life, even though you're married, happily married with kids. There was something about the firstness of it. There was something about the innocence of it. There was something about the wonder of it, and I mean, do I still have a connection to Inside? I have to be honest, like, I don't ever really listen to Inside, somewhat because I can't stand the way my voice sounds on the recordings, and that's nobody's fault but my own. And the other part of it is that, like, I guess that was just another, I mean, for now, for myself, I listen to older stuff, Fleetwood Mac and Pink Floyd and, Led Zeppelin and, that's Marshall Tucker Band. Like, that's really where I've been going with my music, is back to, the 60s and 70s. And so my connection to the music is only the experience that I had over time. But what's going to motivate me is I'm going to draw off the crowd, like the amount of people that are super excited that we're doing these reunion shows and putting out this merch and whatnot. Like, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to see their faces, I'm going to feel their energy, and, miraculously, I'll be 23, 24 years old again, and everything will come back to me, muscle memory and emotion as well. And, we'll just ride the wave like we always did. I mean, that's another, kind of great thing about this scene, that I think people who just kind of comfortably sat on that bus of mainstream music their whole lives missed out on a little bit. Was, like you said earlier, like, you could watch this band play and they're your favorite band in the world and you're starstruck by seeing this dude, and then all of a sudden he's making you a sandwich at Subway a week later, and I think it was the grassroots nature of it all. It's the fact that we all kind of got our hands dirty to make the scene exist and endure, and to go back and feel that again. I think it'll come back to me quickly for all of us, I'm sure. And I look forward to experiencing it one more time. I mean, it's been, 15 years since our last reunion show. We're all 49 and 50, so I highly doubt we're going to be doing this at 60. So this will probably be the death rattle, so to speak. So we're definitely going to make the most of it. I'm sure our bodies are going to, it's going to take a toll on us. I already told my boss I will not be in the Monday after these shows. I will be recovering in many ways, and I can tell you right now, if it's anything like the last reunion show 15 years ago, I had people grabbing on me, pulling on me, climbing on me, yanking the mic from me. I'm trying to keep myself upright. So if that's all going to go on again, I'm sure I'll be feeling it physically for a couple of days. But at the same time, I look forward to it. And when it's over, I'll probably miss it more than ever. Because like I said, I would have to say that this is most likely the last hurrah.
There we go. That was Mike from Inside. And please check it out. Like, if the moral of this particular interview and story is for you to check out Inside, I have done my due diligence and I've done my best to push you towards that. So and then also listen to his other bands. Star Harbor is really good, as well as Dearly Departed. He has a very unique vocal style, and I think that is the through line in obviously all the music that he puts out there. So next week is a special episode because I don't really bring on more than one person, because sometimes it gets a little confusing, but this is kind of a, sort of self-promotion, but also a really fun conversation I had with friends who were all playing a show together on August 24th or 24th, 25th. I can't remember the actual date, but this day forward, and on the Might of Princes. And my band Taken, we are all playing in New York City at the Bowery Ballroom. And anyways, the idea came from Vadim, the guitarist of This Day Forward, who is the guest, as well as Chris, who is the drummer of On the Might of Princes. actually appeared on the show many years ago, but they're like, hey, how about we do a podcast, obviously kind of, to promote the show, but then the idea of just like having these conversations about, what it's like to play in bands that are, reuniting and playing shows again and all that sort of stuff. And I thought it was an interesting angle as opposed to just like, us talking for 5 minutes about like, hey, you should buy tickets to the show. And so it was a fun conversation, and that's what's happening next week on the podcast. So until then, please be safe, everybody.
This podcast is supported by BetterHelp, offering licensed therapists you can connect with via video, phone, or chat. Here's BetterHelp Head of Clinical Operations, Hesyu Joe, discussing who can benefit from therapy.
I think a lot of people think that you're supposed to be going to therapy once you're like having panic attacks every day. But before you get to that point, I think once you start even noticing that you feel a little bit off and you can't maintain this harmony that you once had in relationships, that could be a sign that maybe you want to go talk to somebody. There's always a benefit in talking to someone because we can all benefit from improved insight about ourselves and who we are and how we behave with other people. So if you're human, that's like a good indicator that you could benefit from talking to somebody.
Find out if therapy is right for you. Visit BetterHelp.com today. That's BetterHelp.com.
The following is a high five moment from highfivecasino.com.
Welcome to Burger Yippee. Would you like a hot apple pie today?
Yes, yeah, I won! Woohoo!
So that's a yes on the apple pie?
I just went big time playing High Five Casino on my phone. Real cash prizes, free daily rewards, over 1,200 games. Yeah!
So yes or no on the apple pie?
Whoa! I won again!
I'll take that as a yes. Drive around.
Have you had your high five moment today? Only at highfivecasino.com.
High Five Casino is a social casino. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Play responsibly. Conditions apply. See website for details.
High Five Casino.
Odoo is business management made so simple, a kid could explain it.
Sometimes business software can't talk to other programs. But Odoo, funny word, has every program from CRM to HR to accounting in one platform. It should cost a lot, but it doesn't. So you should use Odoo because they save you money.
Odoo makes a lot of sense, but doesn't cost a lot of sense. Sign up now at odoo.com.
That's ODOO.com.
Good job.
Thanks.
Kroger brand products have the great taste you'll celebrate. That's why over 40 million people choose Kroger brand products, making them a true crowd pleaser. And with quality guaranteed, you'll love your choice or get your money back. Score Kroger brand products with savings you can cheer for and great taste you can't resist. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
This is Malcolm Gladwell from Revisionist History. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With some elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love, you transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive that's all your own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.